My story begins in 1892 when Micah and Anna Rahachuk brought my great-grandpa, Peter Rahachuk, into the world. He was born in the village of Wazarina, Ukraine, along with 5 siblings. Millie, Julia, Tilly, Alexander, Anna, and my great-grandpa immigrated to Canada for a better life. Unfortunately, my great-grandpa's younger sister, Anna, died in Europe at a young age. There was more opportunity since the Ukraine had nothing to offer. A big piece of land in the Ukraine was the size of a small house lot in the city today. Ukrainian immigrants and their descendants have left a profound mark on the development of Ontario and Western Canada around this time. The first major immigration was around 170,000 Ukrainians between 1891 and 1914. The Rahachuks came here when they read encouraging reports on farming conditions. It prompted others to immigrate. The government's goal was to settle population in the West, specifically in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta. In 1912, at the age of 20, Peter arrived in Canada. Robert Borden was the Prime Minister at the time. My great-grandpa lived with his sister Julia and her husband Michael Belinsky in Howell, known as Prudhomme, Saskatchewan. Finally, in 1914, Peter obtained his citizenship papers. In 1915, he started to homestead in the area north of North Battleford, Saskatchewan. My great-baba, Petronella Tushinsky, was born on April 15, 1899 in the village of Mushkatiwaka, Ukraine. She had 3 brothers, Nick, Peter, John, and 1 sister named Mary. John and Mary died in the Ukraine at a very young age. In 1914, at the age of 15, Petronella began her settlement to Canada with her mother Dora and her 2 brothers. My great-grandpa met my great-baba in the district of Cudworth, Saskatchewan, where Petronella had been living with her mother. Peter and Petronella got married on February 12, 1916. During their marriage, they moved to North Battleford and had 10 children, consisting of 7 sons and 3 daughters. The 2 oldest sons were brought up in North Battleford. In 1921, Peter and Petronella moved to Cudworth, where the rest of their children were born. The hardships included living in clay homes, winters were tough, and transportation was limited, and only could depend on the garden for food. As the family worked, they would improve the farm and expand it. When the years passed, there was electricity and coal-heated homes. Wood was hard to get, is what my grandpa said. Instead of horses for transportation, buggies got introduced. The most important moment that affected my family's life was having freedom. The Rahachuks farmed in the area of Cudworth until 1950. Peter passed away at the age of 58 due to a stroke. My great-baba farmed for only a couple more years, then moved to the town of Cudworth. She passed away at the age of 82. In those 10 children, my grandpa Dominic was born on November 19, 1940. My grandpa Don went to Scala School until grade 8, then on to Cudworth School for 4 years of high school, where he graduated. After graduation, he moved to Saskatoon. He then worked as an orderly for the University Hospital for 2 years. His next occupation was working for the Saskatchewan Liquor Board. While living in Saskatoon, he met my baba, Mary Kalina. My great-baba, Justine Kalina, was born on March 7, 1908 in Buchach, Ukraine. She was 104 years old when she passed away in 2012. The First World War just broke out when she started school. She vividly remembers the shelling, shielding with pillows, and the Russian soldiers bringing them food and sheltering them. When the war was over, my great-baba's parents thought it was more important for her to herd cows than go to school. She never learned to read, write, or drive, and spoke very limited English. She's only had 3 surgeries in her life, one of them being carpal tunnel from making too many pierogies. She took no medications other than the occasional Tylenol. She got married at 26 years old, and 4 years later, 6 months before the Second World War, my great-baba and great-grandpa and their 3-year-old son Peter immigrated to Canada. After leaving for Canada, she never saw her family again. She had 3 sisters and 2 brothers. Her mother lived until she was 100 years old. They arrived in Montreal by ship. The journey was long for my great-baba because she was seasick for the whole 3-week trip. They spent 1 winter living with my great-grandpa's stepbrother. In the spring, they arrived in Foston. They bought a strip of land just west of Scrip and undertook much hard work. They cleared land, picked rocks, and plowed the soil. Then they built a small house and had 3 more children, Kathy, Mike, and my baba, Mary. My Baba was born on August 22, 1944 in Rose Valley, Saskatchewan. In 1956, they built a more modern log house in Scripps, Saskatchewan. My great Baba and great grandpa continued farming until 1973 and then moved to Quill Lake. My great grandpa passed away in 1978 and Justine remained in Quill Lake until her move to St. Joseph's Home at the age of 95. My Baba moved to Saskatoon in 1963 and began working as a receptionist at a trucking company. My Baba and Grandpa met at a Manhattan ballroom dance. My grandpa was too scared to look my Baba in the eyes because he has a blue and a green eye. They married on May 18, 1968. Today, they still live on a farm in Firdale, taking care of the farm and animals. My Baba and Grandpa had 3 children, Del, Karen, and Cindy. My mom, Karen, was born on April 2, 1971. She graduated from Holy Cross High School in 1989. On the other side of my family, my grandma, Joan Senchuk, was born on April 2, 1940 at Mrs. Reed's house in Cardiff, Saskatchewan. Joan moved to Estevan in 1959 and met my grandpa Walter in the fall. They married at the United Church on June 2, 1962. They had 3 children in their marriage, Randy, my dad Rick, and Lori. My dad graduated from the Estevan Comprehensive School in 1982, then moved to Saskatoon in 1984. He sold cars at Jubilee Ford, then switched to Merlin Motors. My mom met my dad at the Merlin Motors Christmas party in 1990. She then moved to Estevan in 1992 and married in 1996. My parents welcomed my sister Kelsey on May 4, 1998, then me on December 6, 1999. Jean Chrétien was the Prime Minister at the time. My parents are presently working at the family dealership Senchuk Ford. I went to Spruce Ridge School from kindergarten to grade 8, then graduated from ECS in 2017. I've lived in Estevan my whole life, but I will be attending Moose Jaw Sask Polytech in the fall. I'm very thankful that my life growing up was easy, with no sacrifices like my ancestors faced.